Thanks for that, Cyril Vanier in the France 24 newsroom. After the subprime crisis of 2007, after the big bank bailout of 2008, are we headed for another summer of gloom and doom? On both sides of the Atlantic, we've been hearing a lot of talk of deadlines, of last chance summit meetings. In Berlin, as you've seen in the news, the French president gone to see the German chancellor to try and hammer out a deal before a Thursday EU summit and stop growing panic over debt. Angela Merkel, so far, shrugging off pressure from the IMF to come up with a blockbuster solution now. Debt also concentrating the minds in Washington ahead of an August 2nd deadline that would shut down the federal government. Barack Obama hailing a compromise that was hammered out Tuesday in the Senate, but Republicans in the House of Representatives coming up with their own much more frugal plan, one that goes a lot less further in raising the debt ceiling. A game of liar's poker that has panicked investors. The main stock markets down again this Wednesday. They've been pushing gold to record highs on worries that politicians, be they in the U.S. or in Europe, don't have what it takes to reach the right compromise. There you see the price of gold, which has been flirting with $1,600 an ounce. So, if the world's economy at stake, why are so many saying that what happens in Brussels, what happens in Washington is not my problem? And if voters and banks don't want to foot the bill, why should they be forced to? Today in the France 24 debate, payback time. And joining us to talk about this topic from Boston, Romain Rancière, former economist at the IMF. Welcome back, sir.
Hello, welcome.
Also with us here in our studios in Paris, Bill Stewart of the American University of Paris. How are you? And joining us from Sicily, from Ragusa, in fact, Fabrizio Coricelli, professor of economics at the Paris School of Economics. Welcome to you as well. By the way, you too can weigh in on the discussion on the France 24 debate Facebook page. And you can always send your comments in on Twitter as well. Our handle here is at FrancoisF24. Now, as you've heard in the news, the German government warning no big announcements after Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy dined in Berlin this Wednesday, and just 24 hours ago when she was in the company of the Russian president, the German chancellor warning no big announcements today, perhaps no big announcements all week.
Whoever takes political responsibility seriously knows there won't be a major breakthrough, not on Wednesday, nor on Thursday.
Romain Rancière, your reaction to that statement?
I think they are entering in a very difficult negotiation. So in some sense, it makes sense to be not to raise expectations too much. But what at stake is really large because they want in the meantime to have the private sector to pay share of the burden by rolling over the debt. In the meantime, to avoid these to be declared as a partial default, and then will be a default event that will trigger all the derivatives. So it's kind of a very difficult party they are playing, trying to bail in the private sector, and in the meantime, avoiding a default to be declared by the rating agency. So I think there is three parties involved. There is governments, there is private sector, there is rating agencies. It's a very delicate negotiation. So I think Angela Merkel is aware of what's at stake, and she's very careful not to raise too much expectations.
And perhaps European leaders have gotten burned by saying too much the past couple of months.
Oh, yes, for sure. I think in this case, if they are kind of announcing an upcoming deal, each time they were kind of bombastic, saying, oh, first, we don't need the IMF, we'll be sorting out by yourself, then there is no chance, any default, there is no problems, we're going to solve it. And now they are on the verge of defaulting, so they have been kind of burnt in the past, for sure.
Let's cut to the chase on this issue. Fabrizio Coricelli, is Angela Merkel making a stand, and how far is she going to go in resisting suggestions to get the private sector to foot more of the bill?
Well, I think that what we saw in the last weeks in Italy, and with the increase of the spread on the Italian bonds and the decline of trust on the Italian debt, with some good signs the last couple of days, signals that there is a very important and decision that has to be taken beyond the details of the deal. From the summit, they have to come up with the signal to the market that there won't be a default on the Greek debt.
So in other words, when Merkel says that don't expect big decisions Thursday, you're saying you should expect big decisions because this is the last chance saloon?
Well, it's not the last chance, but I don't think we can go much longer with this uncertainty on this issue, because the market is already testing the debt of the other countries, and we have seen the spread on the Italian debt go beyond 300%, which, with the political situation in Italy, can very quickly then turn in a very, very serious situation in which people can start thinking what was unthinkable until a few weeks ago, that there could be a default on the Italian debt, which I think is not something that will happen, but they have to come up with an idea that they are working out a solution, and the details between on what would be the exact amount that the private sector and how the private sector has to contribute to the solution, and how much would be on the part of the official institutions. This is, I think, will not be solved on Thursday, but they have to come up with a signal that the eurozone is not going to allow Greece to default. And now this is a very tricky. The debt of Greece is increasing so rapidly that without a solution, the interest rate is so high that the debt is not sustainable. So a default, if they don't solve the situation quickly, the default of Greece will be inevitable. Now, what is going to be the issue is that the market will react immediately by thinking that all the other countries could be in trouble. The default could be possible also for the other countries. So I think that beyond all the details of the solution, all the practical details of the solution, the signal that should come up on Thursday is a clear signal that the eurozone is going to find basically a way to sustain any attack to the debt, to the euro debt.
To find out a solution there. Bill Stewart.
Sir.
What should Angela Merkel do?
Oof. What would I like to see her do, or what will she do, or what should she do? I think she should stand by her guns. We're looking at a situation now where and I'll attack the United States in a minute. The European Union, which formed its monetary union with the promise that nobody would get in if they had more than 60% debt as a percentage of GDP. I don't know who has the lowest debt in Europe, but countries like Germany are up to 85%. France is touching the 99%, and Greece and Italy are 130%. I think the signal that the market needs is twofold. I think Fabrizio is correct. They need a strong signal that default is not coming soon. But more importantly, perhaps they need a signal that they are going to be able to solve their long-term problems, just like the United States has to tell the world that August 2nd or not is not the real problem. It's next year and the year after and the 20 years after. Are they going to stop spending far more money than they make?
So what does sticking by her guns mean?
I think she means, and it's hard to say, I think she means that she is not going to have German taxpayers pay for Greek tax avoiders.
But you just said a minute ago that you don't want to see, you don't want default on a wide scale across Europe.
I think somebody's going to have...
Aren't those two statements contradictory?
No, not exactly. France could offer, how much money is involved? $50 billion? It's nothing. It's really not much money. For Greece it is, because Greece is a small country. But for France it's not. For Walmart it's a month and a half sales. She is probably trying to get the best deal she can, which may involve saying we will not personally bail out Greece. We will not ask the private sector to really pay. You've seen what happened to French banks this past week. First, they passed the stress test saying they're all in great shape, and then with the possibility of the private sector being asked to pay for the Greek government's bad fiscal policy, the stock market has really punished the French banks. They're down 20-25%.
All right, a bit of doubt over those stress tests. We'll get back to that point a
Yes,
bit
there's
later.
doubt on them, but still, you shouldn't fall 25% after you get a good medical checkup.
The former conservative chancellor, Helmut Kohl, has been making waves. In an interview in news magazine Der Spiegel, Kohl stating that what the current chancellor is doing is very dangerous. He recently complained, according to one visitor, "She's destroying my Europe." Then, in a popular broadsheet build, Kohl denying that he said that, but all the while making some more veiled attacks on his successor. "It is true that I, like many people, am worried about the development in Europe and of the euro. I also see it as an urgently necessary that the supposed euro crisis isn't regarded and discussed as a structural crisis of the euro per se, but as what it is, the result of homemade mistakes and challenges for both sides, Europe and the national states." Romain Rancière, how has Angela Merkel fared so far in this?
No, I think we haven't really seen. So she has been kind of, as I said, she has been very tough in talks, but in fact, in actions, she has been following the others and continue to provide more and more support to Greece. So the very strong stance she has taken has been mostly in word. Now she's at a crossroad in some sense. If she wants to be tough, she has to make a credible threat, and the credible threat will be the same thing that Paulson did in the September 2008 when he said, "Well, I might let Lehman to fall." But then after that, he probably regretted that he had let Lehman falling. So I think that's exactly the point where she is now. She wants to be credible in making the threat that without private sector involvement, there will be no more European support. But I'm not sure she will be able to push that far. So if the private sectors agree, then it will be fine. But if the private sector disagree, I think they will just have to provide more and more supports. And at the end, they will be mostly official creditors. And it will be just the problems between Greece and its official creditors, with the private sectors that have been able to exit.
And Romain, you as a former IMF man, when the funds came up with that statement on Tuesday, pushing hard for a solution Thursday, how not unprecedented, but how important was that statement?
No, I think they wanted to put a backstop to a kind of free-rolling support to Greece. So they wanted to say there will be a limit. We're not going to be bankrolling Greece without a limit for the next 20 years. So they wanted to test whether there were some alternatives. So I think that was a strong statement. But in the meantime, I don't think either private sector is not ready to play with the project with proposal of Sarkozy and Merkel. I don't think the IMF will stop providing support. So I think it's a war of attrition between the private sectors and the official creditors. But at the end, maybe in a bit of a paradoxical way, the private sector is a bit in a stronger position because they know that if they don't go along with the plan, the official creditor will just substitute to them.
Fair point. And Bill Stewart, again, we've said this numerous times. The notion of time is very different if you're a lawmaker, a policymaker, or if you're an investor.
Yeah, or if you're an analyst, or if you're if you're holding these bonds, you just don't like the uncertainty, and that's what eventually has to go away. But right now, there's no signs really that anybody's going to solve any problem. Even if they find a solution Thursday to Greece's problems, there's a lot of other people lining up to have other problems soon, including the United States.
And is this a classic case? You know, the scenario's been written before. There's huge crises in Europe, and a quiet dinner between the French president and the German chancellor is really the crux of it. That's where stuff in Europe gets sorted out.
They can do things, but then they have to bring those policies back home. Remember that here in Europe, as much as I love my adopted home, the European Union was supposed to solve all of our problems. It was oversold, but it was supposed to solve all of our problems. And an awful lot of people think or feel or wonder or suspect that it hasn't solved the problems and that the euro hasn't done its job. And people are talking about something that is probably not going to happen, which is the euro collapsing. And it shouldn't collapse even if Greece collapses. I mean, if the Greek government collapses, it's not the whole Greek economy that's in trouble. It's the Greek government and some companies. But this is almost unthinkable back in 1992. In fact, I used to express some doubts about the euro, and I was roundly shouted down by anybody I was speaking to in the French business school world. It's possible that the euro will collapse, and we will have the French franc in our pockets a year or two from now, or something else. But the politicians can only solve so much.
Interesting point, because when pressed on the differences between Paris and Berlin, the French finance minister this Wednesday dismissed these differences over the future of Europe and its monetary integration.
This is more a discussion about the degree of involvement, not about basic values. What unites us is far more important than what we're discussing now.
And singing from the same hymn sheet, the head of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso, almost employing a dramatic turn of phrase in the build-up to Thursday's summit in Brussels.
But all of our efforts are based on a single market and a strong euro. That is what is at stake. That is why we must provide a solution tomorrow. I believe now is the time to decide.
He believes now is the time to decide. Romain Rancière, are we close to something akin to the crumbling of the eurozone?
I'm not sure about that. I think, of course, if there is a kind of a default on Greek debt, there will be immediately a lot of problem of payments in the Greek economy and in the connection between the Greek economy and the rest of Europe. So there might be a run on the banks. So at some point, there will be really a problem just of a lack of liquid assets available in Greece just to meet payments. So in Argentina, after the crisis of 2001, some local governments start issuing new type of currencies, some IOU type of securities. So that's worked out for some time until things calm down and they will be able to withdraw the new currency. So something like that can actually occur. So you have a problem of payments. So you have to introduce a new form of currency. So just maybe a piece of paper in which the government say, I owe you that amount of money. And until things calm down, you might need to use this type of thing. So after that, I think there are still a huge amount of private debt in euro in Greece. So they will try to avoid at all costs leaving the euro because the balance sheet effect will be tremendously important.
And when we come back, we'll look at how this tug of war is taking place, not just in Europe, but also in the United States. Stay with us. The France 24 debate continues.